Greetings, I'm Professor Hobo, and welcome to another HOBOTECH News product review. GROWATT is well known for their low-frequency inverters and has decided to delve into the very crowded solar generator market with their own 2,000-watt offering. Meet the Infinity 1500. But is it any good? Let's find out.
HOBOTECH.
Inside the Infinity 1500 is a 1512 watt-hour lithium-ion battery rated 800 cycles to 80%. That means you can cycle this 800 times from dead to full, and you only lose 20% of the battery capacity after 800 cycles. As for size and weight, I'll go ahead and put those specifications here at the bottom of the screen, and this is what it weighed on my scale. The Infinity 1500 actually resembles a much happier alternate universe version of the ECOFLOW Delta. I mean, just check out this design. You got the plugs on one side, the inputs on another side, and USB and everything in the screens on the other side. Same exact size holes, same exact fans inside, same pair of grab handles on each side. So just think of this as the bearded Spock of solar generators. And those of you hardcore into Star Trek know exactly what I mean. Now, as for the inverter size, it gets a little interesting because the GROWATT enables the user to decide, do you want a 1500 watt inverter, 1800 watt inverter, or a 2000 watt inverter? Actually, inside the app, you can select between those three modes. And of course, this is pure sine. No one makes modified sine in these things anymore. And by limiting the power of the inverter, it actually lowers the loudness of the cooling fans, which we're going to go ahead and test here in a bit. And to access this power, you have 4 20 amp outlets on the side. As for ways to charge, there are the standard 3. First, of course, is by grid, or what I call AC wall power, with a maximum of 1500 watts. Now, the charger is built in, so all you need is this cable. There are no external power bricks or external chargers you got to worry about. And the charging rate is actually configurable within their app. And at the maximum 1500 watt rate, the GROWATT can charge from 0 to 80% in under an hour, or about an hour and a half or so to full. And the second method is with the included 12 24 volt vehicle charger, which takes about 14 hours. Finally, and they do include the cable, which is MC4 to XT60. It's a really nice solid connection and a pretty long cable. The GROWATT supports 800 watts of solar through its built-in MPPT controller, and it does have a surprisingly very wide voltage range for a product of this size. That voltage range is 12 to 100 volts, up to 12 amps. Now at 800 watts, you can top up the GROWATT in just under 3 hours under perfect sky conditions. The voltage range as tested though is actually a little bit different than the printed manual, and we're gonna go ahead and review this in my testing coming up. As for 12 volt output types, the Infinity 1500 offers a single 12 volt output in the form of a normal cigarette lighter socket. Now this is rated 12 volts at 10 amps and is regulated at 13.6 volts. As for USB output types, you have 6 USB outputs total. You get a pair of standard USB outputs good for charging up your dinosaurs, a pair of 18 watt quick charge ports, and a pair of 60 watt power delivery outputs. Note that the power delivery outputs are output only and cannot be used to charge the GROWATT. As for other outputs, there is a 15 watt wireless charging pad up top if your phone supports wireless charging. As for other features, it offers a basic 20 millisecond UPS or uninterruptible power supply feature, and we'll demo that here in a bit. Now, because it does offer a UPS feature, it means up to 3 units can be chained together from the output of one to the input of the other, and that essentially expands battery capacity. However, this does mean having the inverter run on all of the units, and that wastes quite a bit of power. So it's really not the most efficient way to expand the battery capacity on this, but I did want to mention it since they do note it in their manual and on the website as a feature. And while there is no built-in flashlight good for flagging down our little buddies upstairs, GROWATT does have their own app called MyGrow, which lets you remotely control the unit. Now here's a very brief overview of the GROWATT app. You can see it has a little battery icon there. It tells you how many minutes it's going to take to charge, because I'm currently charging it at 729 watts. Gives you temperature, battery percentage, if you're charging with solar or car charger, or the AC charger, which you can see down there, 900 watts. Turn that off and I'll show you how this all changes. The screen will actually change. See, now it says how much time is remaining. So that's kind of cool that the icon itself changes colors depending on if you're charging or not. So I can go here into the settings. So in the settings, you get your serial information, change temperature. This has battery protection on it, so you can actually tell it, I only want it to charge to a certain percentage, which is great. AC charging speed, you can choose between slow, normal, and fast. Obviously, if you put it on slow, it's going to lower the fan noise. Output power, this is where you can change between 1.5, 1.8, and 2 kilowatts. You turn beeps on and off. How long do you want inverter standby? I just set mine to 6 hours. When do you want your screen to turn off? You can choose whatever you like. I have mine set to never. And this is where you can do your firmware upgrades and get help and feedback. That's all there is to the app. As for the warranty, GROWATT does offer a 2-year manufacturer warranty on this product. And of course, I took the GROWATT into my secret laboratory here where I performed all kinds of crazy experiments on it, including, yes, of course, let's all say it together now, a double-fisted bang, bang, battery capacity test. Now, as for the results of the DC battery capacity test, it scored 1,023 watt hours out of 1,512 for an abysmal 68%. Now, I didn't notice until after I started editing this video that I had apparently left the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth enabled and the screen on during the test. Those parasitic loads could have affected the outcome of the results. So what I decided to do last minute, and this was literally last night, I ran the test again a second time using a little bit higher load this time, but I made sure that the Bluetooth and Wi-Fi and the screen were off. And well, somehow the results were actually worse by about 40 watt hours, and I have no idea why. So it seems that getting about 1,000 watt hours from the DC output is a legit result. Now, as for the results of the AC battery capacity test, it scored far better at 1,230 watt hours out of 1,512, or a very respectable 81%. And this was on the maximum 2,000 watt inverter setting with Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and the screen turned off. Pure sine wave check under load. We have the GROWATT going at a full 1,800 watt load. Here's what the sine wave looks like. Sine wave is perfect at 119 volts, 60 hertz. Inverter capacity test. This is where we determine how much power can we actually pull out of the GROWATT inverter. For the remainder of this testing, I'm going to leave it on the 2,000 watt setting. The fans are apparently run a little bit louder, but we want to see how far can we actually push this inverter, and that means only one thing. Dun, dun, dun! The solar degenerator. Okay, you want to watch the number right here. That's the number of watts, and I'm going to go ahead and leave this up so you can watch that as well. So we'll take it up to 2,000 and beyond. All right, we're at 2,000, 2,100. We're already getting a beep. 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. We shut down at 2,600 watts with an overload error message. 2,600 watts? That's pretty good. Let's go on to the next test, which is the heat soak test or 5-minute cooling test. This is where we run it at its 2,000 watt peak for at least 5 minutes to see if anything strange happens. Does it start smelling funny? Does it start smoking, drinking, calling it some other names, doing other nasty things that you don't want it to do? This is the only way to find out. So let's go ahead and get this going at 2,000 watts, and we'll go ahead and start the timer on my tablet. We'll come back in 5 minutes and see, can it sustain 2,000 watts for 5 minutes without problems? And here we are coming up on 5 minutes, and no problems. Even though the overload light is blinking, we're still sustaining 2,000 watts. So there you have it, 5 minutes, no problem. I don't smell anything funny. In fact, the air is barely warm coming out the back. Now, there is one thing I notice, and that is the fans are loud. So let's just see how loud they are. Here we are at about a meter away. Looks like about 60 decibels. That's pretty darn loud. One other thing to note, it does mention in the user manual that if you do a full discharge on this for a long period of time and get it hot and bothered, that if you try to charge it from AC wall power, it either won't charge or it'll charge slowly. So we just ran this thing for a hot 5 minutes. Let's go ahead and plug it into AC wall power and see how fast it charges. So it looks like we're still charging at the full 1500 watts, even though I ran this for 5 straight minutes at maximum capacity. Max charge rate test. This is where we determine how fast can it charge from various sources, right? From 12 volts from your vehicle, from solar panels, or what other methods it supports. Right now I have it set to 13.6 volts. It is pulling almost 9 amps and is charging at 106 watts, which is typical because you don't want to pull more than about 10 amps off your cigarette lighter if you're charging from 12 volts. This also means if you're charging from a 12-volt battery, you can expect to charge at about 100 watts. Let's go ahead and bump this up to solar panel voltage, which is about 21, 22 volts. Okay, the GROWATT hard limits the input to 12 amps. So no matter what voltage you put in, you're not going to exceed 12 amps. So at 22 volts, which is a typical, like a 200-watt solar panel, at 12 amps is going to give you about 250 watts of charging. So that means if you have a 250 or 300-watt panel, that would output 22 volts, which is very easy to do, you can actually expect easily 250 watts. Now the GROWATT supports from 12 to 100 volts of solar. That's a pretty wide range. So let's go ahead and crank this all the way up to 100 volts and see what happens. All right, 80 volts at 10 amps, 800 watts. That's pretty good. I'm gonna have to guess that 800 watts is probably the maximum for this product. And I've confirmed my suspicions because at 100 volts, it accepts 8 amps for 800 watts of solar. So the GROWATT accepts a very impressive 800 watts of solar at 100 volts. This gives you a very wide range of options when it comes to solar panels. Now, the GROWATT is going to prefer solar panels in series over other products that might support more solar panels in parallel. And the reason why is that this can only take 12 amps. When you put solar panels in parallel, you increase the amps. When you put solar panels in series, you increase the volts. So this is designed to run with multiple solar panels in series up to 100 volts to get this 800 watt input. The GROWATT can handle up to 110 volts of solar and no more. The manual says it can handle 100, so I decided to test it for myself. 110 is the cutoff. After 110, it shuts down. So that's voltage, that's amps. Watch what happens when I hit 111. It beeps with an error message and stops charging. Now what about charging noise? We just charged it with 800 watts of solar. How much noise is it making? So about 52, 53 decibels, much quieter charging than discharging, and this is typical for most power stations. Now what about simultaneous charging? What if you want to pump 800 watts of solar into the solar input while you plug it into AC wall charger or say a gasoline, propane, or whatever generator at the same time because you really want to charge this thing fast? I do have 800 watts of fake solar being pumped in, and I do have it plugged in over here. You can see plugged into AC wall outlet simultaneously. Let's look at what's happening on the screen. Now you can see here, this is the total input wattage for the GROWATT. Above this, you can actually see two icons. One shows a plug, the other one shows what looks like a little solar array getting baked by the sun. You can see here, we're inputting 1500 watts. So here's what's happening. The GROWATT favors solar, so it's accepting all 800 watts of solar, but since this can charge at a maximum of 1500 watts, it's allowing you to pull the rest of it from grid power or AC wall power. That means you can actually charge this thing at 1500 watts very quickly using both solar and AC power at the same time. So what about pass-through charging or UPS? This does have a built-in rudimentary UPS system, which stands for uninterruptible power supply. This one actually they say is a less than 20 millisecond switchover, which in most cases should be fast enough for computer equipment. Of course, they tell you don't put like professional servers and things like that on these. These aren't meant for that. But if you have a personal computer, it should switch fast enough. Now we're gonna test that here in a minute. Right now it's charging from AC wall power, so it's gonna pass through that power to this heater. Okay, so watch the light. I'm gonna go ahead and turn the power off. We're gonna pretend we're having a blackout. 3, 2, 1. That was a very, very fast blink. I did see it on the camera. I'm gonna do this again. Let's go ahead and turn the power back on. 3, 2, 1. Yeah, it is very, very fast. Now here's the ultimate test for the Builtin UPS and the GROWATT. I have this ancient 18-year-old laptop with no battery in it. This is the old battery. It's right now running completely off the inverter of the GROWATT. So I have the GROWATT plugged in right here to the wall. It's passing that power through to the laptop. So it's in UPS mode right now. Here I am doing work on my laptop. Here comes a lightning storm. It knocks out the power. So when I knock out the power by flipping the switch, let's see what happens to this old laptop. Ready? 3, 2, 1. It's still running, guys. Let's go ahead and flip it back on just to make sure that there's no two-way problem. Power's coming back on. 3, 2, 1. Okay, power came back on, no problem. The GROWATT switches fast enough to keep a laptop or PC computer running in the event of a power outage. DC output test. We're gonna see, can you pull 10 amps from the regulated output? Now it is regulated at 13.6 volts. You get the full 10 amps and still have 11.8 volts. So very good results for the 12 volt. Even pulling the maximum 10 amps, you still have a very respectable 11.8 usable volts. Now the GROWATT has a pair of 60 watt USB power delivery outputs. These are not bidirectional. You cannot charge the GROWATT through USB, but it does have two 60 watt outputs. Can they both output 60 watts simultaneously? You can see here I have a pair of power bends. The top one is charging at 60 watts. The bottom one is charging at 57 watts. And you can see the combined total right there, 125 watts. So yes, both power delivery outputs can supply 60 watts simultaneously. So for the wireless charging pad, you can see there's a little light right here that'll tell you that it's on and ready to charge. I have this little wireless charging pad on my phone because my phone doesn't support wireless. But if I put it on the pad, this will actually change blue. Oh, there's the blue light. And there we have it. Musician's favorite amp interference test. This is where we determine, does the GROWATT inverter create noise through an audio amplifier? Now, why is this important? Well, a lot of you want to use these portable power stations to power amps. So if you're in a band or you need a PA system remotely or anything that requires an amplifier, and this includes ham radios, you want to have clean power. So let's find out the GROWATT, which is a new product on the market, does it have a clean inverter or not? So all I have to do is hit the AC power button on the inverter. It's going to send power to the amp, and we will see, is it noisy or not? Amazingly, it's clean. So yes, the GROWATT passed this test. You can in fact use this tiny little power station to run a PA system, power amps, and do ham radio operations. Okay, you might be asking, what's the difference in charging speed between slow, normal, and fast? Slow gives you 600 watts. If you put it on normal, it'll allow you to charge at 1200 watts. And fast, you charge at the full 1500 watts. Sound of the fans. So if you put it on slow, because you want it to be quiet, it's actually significantly quieter. Let's go ahead and measure the decibels of the fans. All right, we're about a meter away. Only 50 decibels. That is way quieter than on maximum mode. So here's a solution for those of you that hate noise. Go ahead into the app, change that AC charging speed to slow. It quiets the fans way down and makes it much more tolerable. If you don't mind a little bit of noise, go ahead and put it on the 1200 watts. It does get significantly louder, but if you want the fastest charging possible, you don't care if it sounds like a hairdryer, put it on fast and you will charge it the full 1500 watts. So what do I think about the GROWATT Infinity 1500? Well, for GROWATT's first offering, it is certainly enough bang for the buck to make it onto my recommended list. While there's nothing really game-changing about it, the Infinity 1500 does do everything well. You have a clean 2000 watt inverter with a 1500 watt hour battery, ample USB ports of every flavor, wireless charging, an app which does need a little bit of blingification, and a UPS that switches fast enough for use with personal computers. Fortunately, that's where the good stuff ends, because I'm kind of saddened by that 12 volt DC capacity results that I did verify with a second overnight test. Now I know most folks aren't going to buy this just to use it for the 12 volt output, but if the 12 volt output on this is a major feature for you, like if you're planning on running a 12 volt refrigerator out of that cigarette lighter socket for a long period of time, you may not like the results. If you don't care about the cigarette lighter output, which I don't think most people do anymore, then that's not really an issue. And I still have no idea why the single 12 volt output on this consumes so much power. It's not like it's a 30 amp output or they're offering a whole bunch of ports or special features. It's just one dinky little cigarette lighter socket. Why is it so inefficient? Only GROWATT can answer that. Fortunately, the inverter is great and the results of that test were average across all brands, so at least the inverter output on this is a good thumbs up. Another thing I don't care too much for is the fact that GROWATT decided to raid the parts bin of ECOFLOW. And that means they have the exact same complaint as virtually the entire ECOFLOW line of products when it comes to sound level of their cooling fans. They use these tiny little loud cooling fans, and I'm afraid they're just too darn loud.
I'm afraid you're just too darn loud. Next place.
Fortunately, GROWATT mends this somewhat by offering different charge rates and inverter outputs in an attempt to mitigate some of that loudness. Now, if you don't mind turning everything down to minimal settings, it'll cut out about 6 decibels of noise, and that's the equivalent of walking twice as far away from the unit. And for most of you, I think that'll be good enough. And I think for most noise-sensitive folks, this makes this an even better choice than the ECOFLOW, especially at this rock-bottom introductory price. And about that rock-bottom price, the Infinity 1500 goes for $12.99 retail, but viewers of HOBOTECH, of course, get a special $200 off discount for a final price of only $10.99. That's 55 cents per watt, or 72 cents per watt hour, depending on how you look at it. Now, this discount is only valid from now when this video releases until October 15th. After October 15th, expect this code to expire, no longer work, and the price to go up. Now, what about the competition? Since they share so many parts, the GROWATT's nearest competition is probably the ECOFLOW Delta Max. While most of the specs are very similar, the ECOFLOW sports a slightly larger battery with a much higher price of $18.99. The JACKERY 1500 would actually be the next closest competitor size and price-wise if this was still the year 2020. But in order to even touch the specs of the GROWATT, you need to compare it to the more current $2,100 JACKERY 2000 Pro. When comparing price and features of these competing NMC lithium-ion products, the GROWATT is practically a steal even at its regular $12.99 price. Now, what are the recommendations for solar panels? The GROWATT supports up to 800 watts of solar within a wide voltage range of up to 110 volts, according to my own testing, and that amp limit is capped at 12 amps. But this allows you to use just about any solar panels you want. And if you need portable panels, I'd go with the 200 watt GROWATT panels, because you can get 4 of those and max this out at 800 watts and be done with it. However, if you want a more permanent solution, I would suggest the BOUGERV 180 or 200 watt panels, or the RENOGY 320 watt residential panels, which can be found on hobotech.tv/Amazon. Click on Solar Kits. So if you're interested in the GROWATT Infinity 1500, the link and discount code is in the description of this video below. I'm also going to put the link right here at the bottom of the screen, along with a QR code that you can scan with your mobile device, and it'll take you right over to the GROWATT site where you can check out the brand new Infinity 1500. Thanks for watching. If you learned something today, don't forget to give me that thumbs up below. And if you're not a subscriber already, you know what to do. That's it for now. Till next time.
Odin commands you to like and subscribe. And clean my litter box.
If your search for a Sultan is a pain in the neck, go to YouTube and watch HOBOTECH, cause he's a testing this and he's a probing that. He's even been probing Odin's cat. If you wanna get all the Sultan back, go to HOBOTECH. Yeah!
RV Golf Guy. Vaughn Rupp. Brian Luters. John Stason Soroka. Dr. Steve Eisenberg.